Good day, my name is Cassie, my surname is Skitter. I'm the CEO of Health Window in South Africa. I want to give you a quick overview of why so many programs in the world failed and why we were lucky enough to stumble across a recipe that has dramatic increases in sales for our clients. The World Health Organization bluntly states that adherence in developed countries averages around 50%. The implication of that is that half your sales are not happening. If patients aren't taking their drugs, they're not buying more of it. So we see in pharmacy data that typically around 50% of the chronic scripts are not filled. That means that your sales should be double what it is currently on chronic sales. On a global level, just take whatever your chronic sales is, multiply it by 2, and that's the potential of adherence. What worked for us was relationships. If we have someone's phone number, if they know that we're calling, they recognize our phone number, they recognize the voice that speaks to them, then we have influence. Within that relationship, we can explain why it's important to take drugs, but often just adding convenience to their pharmacy experience already improves adherence dramatically. How we operate is we take the pharmacy's data, we add data to that, so we will typically take loyalty card or dispense system data, and out of that we'll know who bought what when. We add data to that to say, well, if they bought a certain product, then the active ingredient is X, Y, or Z, and that has certain features, possible side effects, and whatever. So we form a very good health profile of the patient by combining data between the pharmacies and Health Windows data sets. Then we use that data set to predict who should be buying what, when. So firstly, we flag the product as chronic, and out of that we can predict a future dispense date. We arrange the patients for the call center to be phoned according to the maximum value. The call center then phones them and prompts the patient for their parcel to be prepared 2 days prior to when they should be buying. Patients usually agree, or a large portion of them agree. The order is sent to the pharmacy that has an order portal. They prepare that package before the patient even arrives, and the patient benefits of getting improved customer care, improved convenience at the pharmacy. The queues move faster, they have higher adherence rates, and of course if your adherence is higher, you don't have the consequences of non-adherence. So you save heart attacks, strokes, amputations, diabetic disease progression, and so forth. Being able to work on the pharmacy's data allows us to exactly quantify what the gains are. So we can see that if we don't manage patients, roughly about 40% of them are still buying their drugs in the middle of the year. If we manage them, in the bottom graph, it would be 65%. By the end of the year, you would have lost 2/3 of your patients from this pharmacy. If we manage them, you'll still have about 55 to 60% of those retained. The difference is essentially extra sales. So if you look at the end of the year, whatever was left, you've almost doubled the amount of patients that are still on therapy. Sales and adherence correlate very strongly. If we show these drop-offs, pharmacists are saying, but that's not true, my patients are not disappearing like that. I have 1,000 boxes of chronic drugs being sold every month. I have a flat line in terms of sales, all slightly growing, slightly declining. What we do then is we explain that you have that because you have new patients that come in and replenish this leaking bucket. The data shows us that the original group of patients are no longer there, or a big portion of them are no longer there. The data also shows that there are new patients walking in and refilling this leaking bucket. If we lift that retention line, if we keep more patients adherent, the new patients now actually go toward growth. Health Window developed a rather unique set of adherence metrics that run on pharmacy data. One of those is to quantify adherence in terms of the number of dispenses per annum which a managed versus an unmanaged group of patients gets. So if we just take the product here in the middle, Crestor 20 milligram, if the patients were unmanaged, they bought medication 5.4 times a year on average, so they're getting around 5 dispenses. If they were managed, it goes up to 7.6. Generally, we see about 2 to 3 extra boxes, sometimes 4 extra boxes per patient sold off a baseline of around 5 or 6. There are some very dramatic commercial benefits to adherence programs the way Health Window runs them, and it's based on 2 things. It's based on getting really good adherence gains, but the biggest element is that we can do this over thousands of patients. It's no use you getting 3 extra boxes sold on just 3 patients. You need to do that on tens of thousands of patients. And when working with big pharmacies where they have central data, that's usually one of the benefits, is they have access to thousands of patients, and that's why we as Health Window partner the largest pharmacies or partners hundreds of independents to get that footprint. The commercial benefits include that we increase loyalty. Even with loyalty cards, we can see that as soon as patients go onto our programs, the customers are really loyal to the brand and they stay on therapy longer, and they also buy from their pharmacy rather than move around between pharmacies. It increases the number of store visits, so instead of buying 6 times a year, they buy the same drug 9 times a year. It gives the pharmaceutical 3 extra boxes sold, but also the pharmacy gives them more feet through the door. Interestingly, it increases the basket values of medication which these patients are buying. Patients might have 5 or more chronic drugs on their profile, but they only buy 2 or 3 of those. As soon as we have a relationship with that patient and we phone them and they recognize our voices and we have influence, we can explain to them within that relationship that they need to take all 5 for medically valid reasons. So instead of buying down, they buy what they should. And lastly, it increases front shop sales. That's a pharmacy benefit, but we've seen that within 6 months, even patients with loyalty cards start spending up to 30% more on their non-chronic products in the pharmacy, simply because they're coming in more often to buy their chronic drugs. Operationally, for the pharmacies, it means that they can pick and pack when it's quiet. It prevents patients turning around out of those long queues, because when they arrive at the front of the pharmacy's dispensary, they are just handed the package instead of the pharmacist turning his back onto the patient and going to find stock. And of course, because we phone in advance, the pharmacy can order in any stock that might not be on the shelf before the patient walks in, instead of having to tell them there and then that they are out of stock. And lastly, the patient benefits. If you improve adherence, you also improve your health. So improved adherence results in better disease outcomes, and better disease outcomes prevents hospitalization, so it reduces risk for complications like heart attacks or strokes or glaucoma and fracture and so forth. Up until now, I've showed you South African data. Following is some data from a recent implementation in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This pharmacy chain is the second largest in the country. They have about 700 pharmacies. They had about 1.7 million customers walk through their doors in the last 6 months, or over a 6-month period. 1.2 of those, 1.2 million were non-chronic, so they bought something that was not a chronic medication. Around 575,000 bought a chronic drug somewhere in a 6-month period on their loyalty card. If we extrapolate those 575,000 into their own diagram, we can see that around 400,000, as in the blue part of this circle on the right, did not buy in any given month, and about 178,000 on average bought in any given month. So those were the number of chronic patients buying the medication from April 2016 to September 2016. You can see the minimum was 165,000 patients buying, the maximum 181,500 patients buying. So out of 600,000, never more than 181,000 people actually buying their chronic medication. Interestingly, a lot of the chronic patients, 58% of them, which equates to 332,000 patients for this pharmacy chain, bought their chronic drugs just once. It cost them about 37 million reals. Out of the patients that got phoned, 37% declined the service, saying they're already buying from a competitive pharmacy. So just rendering the service generates insights for pharmacy chains, and when pharma partners pharmacies, this is part of the benefits they sell onto the pharmacy chain. After just 6 months, we did a full data analysis on the impact that the program had in the Saudi market. So we tracked month 1 as baseline, and for 5 months after that, we looked at the chronic spend and the front shop spend of these patients that were on the Health Window program. On the chronic side, the managed patients spent an average of 937 reals on chronic drugs, while the unmanaged remaining group of patients spent about 255. So it looks almost quadrupling the total spend on chronic drugs there. Interestingly, the front shop and non-chronic sales to those patients increased by about 30% from 1,171 to 1,440 reals, and the total patient value increased from 1,400 to 2,400 reals on roughly. So almost 1,000 reals spent extra. That is almost $300 being spent extra. So it's really a high value program for the pharmacy that's not only benefiting from extra chronic sales but extra front shop sales as well. When looking at loyalty from data, it was clear that the patients with loyalty cards and on chronic drugs had a very poor retention or persistence rate. 1 month after May, only 43% of them bought their chronic drugs, then 39%, and it went down to 37% after just 5 months. So the loyalty card did not give them adherence rates or good adherence rates. When we implemented the Health Window program, we could see in month 1, instead of 43% still buying, 85% of the patients were still buying. It remained above 80% for 3 months, and then in month 4 dropped to 73%. But that is almost twice as much, almost exactly twice as much, or twice as many patients still on therapy after 4 months. So it's basically doubling your sales to the original group of patients instead of losing them very quickly in this leaking bucket scenario. So we're using chronic medication to be the magnet to pull back customers to the pharmacy and pull them back onto therapy. Health Window is a Microsoft certified partner. We have very well evolved systems. It's been built over 10 years. We have transactional evidence of improved results, so there's no guessing about what I'm showing you. It's simply calculated from the pharmacy's own data. We had successful implementations in different markets and different cultures and different pharmacy and healthcare systems and processes. We have extremely powerful reporting tools to quantify the impact of adherence and the impact of non-adherence on your business. We're one of the few companies that uses patient-level data, which is lacking in the industry. Many people just look at the top line and have no idea that their 10,000 boxes could have been 20,000 if they looked at patient-level data. And we're one of the only companies that I know of that's ever given an ROI guarantee to some of our pharma companies. We said if you don't achieve certain gains, you don't have to pay us. Health Window also received a lot of international recognition, especially from the pharma companies for which we ran programs. So for many of them we won awards within the companies as one of the most innovative projects within the organizations globally. One reward that we're very proud of is the Frost & Sullivan Award. It was given to us in 2014, and we were one of 22 companies that received this. Companies that were on stage with us include Standard Bank, which is a big player in the banking industry. Barloworld is huge in logistics. IBM and EOH are giants in the IT sector. Sasol is a really big energy player, and Samsung everybody knows. So we were very proud to be one of the smallest companies there, but getting recognition amongst these industrial giants and commercial giants. Thanks for watching. My email address is kasi.skitter@healthwindow.co.za.